Welcome again to Training Tuesday. It is great to have you guys here tonight. I am not in my usual digs. I'm on a trip. I'm at the Four Seasons Hotel, which I gotta say, it's nice. I came out here for business. I actually was initially offered 2 nights to come stay for 2 nights, and I turned it down, saying, no, I'll just stay for one. I'd really like to get home, which is true. I'd like to get home. I don't like leaving my dog for that long. I know how that sounds, but it's true. But then I got here and I walked in the door and went, I may have made a mistake by saying I'm not staying for 2 nights. It's really quite comfy. So, greetings from the Four Seasons. And tonight, it's actually really appropriate that we are talking about office politics because I'm here to play a little office politics. It's the purpose of my trip. Today is part 2 of our series on office politics because last Training Tuesday we talked about 4 different kind of common or 5 different common scenarios for office politics, right? The kinds of situations that and environments that are very common when it comes to office politics. And today we are going to talk about 5 distinct personalities that you come up against when it comes to office politics. The people who are playing the game. That's what we're talking about tonight. Tonight we're going to talk about 5, and next week we're going to talk about 5 more. There are lots of fun players when it comes to office politics. So tonight I want to dive into 5. Now I just want to remind you, we talked about this a lot more last week, but I want to remind you, office politics. When we're thinking about office politics, we are talking about your influence and your relationships in the work environment. That is what office politics is about. It is your ability to use your influence and your relationships at work. And you leverage that influence and those relationships to get projects done, to make changes, to make things happen, to get a promotion, to get a right. Like, we leverage politics every day to get the right brand of coffee in the office kitchen. Can take a certain level of office politics. So remember when we talked last week about the 5 different scenarios, one of the scenarios really is the everyday engagement with people at the office, the types of relationships you establish with them that help you get things done. Now, the 5 personalities we're going to talk about tonight are personalities who may or may not get things done, but you're probably running into them as you are going about your day. Tonight we're going to talk about the gossip, the tasker, the grumpasaurus, the petty bureaucrat, and the power grabber. So those are the 5 we're going to talk about. We're going to look at each of these profiles in terms of their typical actions, what's driving them, emotional intelligence, where their EQ is, and the kind of impact they can have in the environment. And then we're going to look at what you can do to manage your interactions with them. So, before we dive into the 5 profiles, let me say welcome again to Training Tuesday. So happy you're here. For those of you who have not joined Training Tuesday before, my name is Natalie Hahn, and I am your host and CEO of Dirty Girls Consulting. If you are new, say hi in the comments, and I'm just going to tell you, I am on hotel Wi-Fi, which, while it seems to be reliable, doesn't always seem to be showing me comments. So if I don't see your comment, just know that I'm looking and I'm trying, and I may end up catching it afterwards on the replay. But I do see that Terry's here, Joyce is here. Welcome, ladies. So glad to have you here. Everyone else, say hello, comment. I'm going to ask you throughout if you've engaged with any of these characters I'm talking about, what your experiences are, and the more you share, the more fun it is. So let's get started. Tonight, we're going to talk first about the office gossip. We all know the office gossip. There's one, if not more, of these in every office. Now, here's the deal. Her action is she spills the tea, right? She talks about everyone and everything. She knows all the stuff. Her driver is that information is power. Information makes her feel like she has some control, some authority. She's in the know. It helps her feel special. Her EQ is typically low. It's typically low because I found with a lot of office gossips, they're not always aware that the information that they're spreading, whether it's true or false, the information that they're spreading can have a real impact. And they're not always aware of the impact the information they're spreading might have. And so they don't think ahead about consequences. And when they're sharing gossip, they're also not always necessarily tuned in to like how to read the room, right? The whole point around having a high EQ, right, emotional quotient, is not just the ability to manage and regulate your own emotions, but it's to read other people. It's to understand the dynamics of what's happening in a room and where people are at. It is to adjust yourself, your delivery, what you communicate, how you communicate it, so that it lands well in the rest of the room, right? So your EQ is all about not only your own awareness of your own emotions, but understanding where other people are at and navigating that environment thoughtfully, intentionally. So the gossip typically has pretty low EQ. And the thing that makes gossips dangerous is that the impact they can have in a work environment, it's unpredictable. It's variable. So it can have none. It could just stir up a lot of drama and nonsense and people waste time, or it can have real consequences. And again, the gossipers don't always think about that. So I remember when I was in college, I was working a summer job, and I was at this place where there was, you know, the regular people who worked there all year round, and then they had a bunch of summer hires. The people who worked there all year round, most of them were 10, 15 years older than me, being in college. The summer hires were of all ages. They were college kids, they were older people, like all ages. But the gossip going on in the office that summer that I worked there was that a summer hire and a regular full-time worker were flirting heavily, if not actually having an affair. They were at least flirting heavily. So that was the gossip every day when people came in. You know, they were chit-chatting about, ooh, they were together at lunch, or ooh, they walked away down a hallway together, nobody saw, you know, just random stuff. You get the idea. So Maria is the temp worker. She's probably 10 years older than me at this point, and we're going to call him Mike, was the permanent worker, and Mike was married. Now this gossip, this rumor, right, had been going around the office for a while. You know, people were chit-chatting about it. I was in the office the day that the resident office gossip shared this little tidbit with the boss. And the tidbit that she shared was it was rumored that someone had overheard Maria saying that if she wanted to, she could break up Mike's marriage. If she wanted to, she could do that. So I'm in the office the day that the office gossip tells our big boss this gossip. She's sharing with him the gossip that's going on, and she shares this also. And, you know, she shared it as casually as, you know, what'd you do this weekend? And, you know, are those forms ready for processing? And she threw this bit in. 2 days later, we were informed that Maria no longer worked for the company. And to this day, I know those two things are related. She shared gossip that was, if it was true, was potentially highly disruptive to the way this man was running his business year round. And she was just a seasonal worker who was creating disruption and potential risk for him. He doesn't need his employee having his marriage destroyed or going through some sort of drama and all of that. So the person who shared that gossip was shocked. And I will give her credit that raised her level of awareness, that raised her EQ when she realized that something she said might have had an impact on somebody losing their job. So gossips don't always mean to play politics. She didn't share that gossip because she wanted Maria to get fired. She shared the gossip because that data point, whether it was true or not, was a feeling of power for her. It was a feeling that she knew something the boss didn't. And this is where I say the EQ is low. We don't think through the consequences, the effects of other people, just about our own sense of power when we're in this mode. So gossips can be dangerous. How many of you work with a gossip? All of you, right? All of you should be saying yes in the comments that you all work with gossips. Because, man, they are everywhere. It is the lowest form possibly of political power. So how do you deal with a gossip? You don't. That's actually, how do you deal with a gossip? You don't deal with her. You may have to work with her as part of your job. You may have to get things done with her. But the minute the conversation veers into personal territory, the minute it veers into, hey, do you know what I heard? Your job is to gracefully excuse yourself with, hey, I've got a lot of work to do. I'll catch you later. Right? You've got other things to attend to. You don't have time to finish this conversation right now, but you'll catch up with her another time. You leave. And I know it's not fun, because I know sometimes office gossip can be fun, and I know it's not fun. But it's also safe. You are always safer not being in the rumor mill than being either in it or a part of it. Part of the drama, right? Part of the voices that are creating drama in the office environment. You want to avoid that as much as you can. So I'm assuming, because I'm not seeing comments in the chat, I'm sorry. Facebook is telling me there are comments, but it's refusing to show them to me. So I'm assuming a lot of you work with office gossips. Like I said, I think every office has one. Okay, profile number 2 is the tasker. The tasker. So while the gossip can be an accidental political animal, the tasker is very conscious of office politics. She literally assigns tasks because her belief, her driver, is that giving direction, giving orders, that's power. So that's her belief. Her EQ is low to moderate to mid-level. Can be kind of, she can play that range. And the impact she has can be anywhere from sort of moderate annoyance to her coworkers and her peers, because she's always tasking people with things to do, to creating a true environment of not a team player, not a lot of team camaraderie, because she's all about just telling people what to do. By telling them what to do, she's putting herself right in the positional power. Positional power is literally where are you in the org chart, and she wants to be above you. So she will, this is my favorite, because a lot of taskers do this. What they'll do is they'll tell you to do something you're already doing. They'll tell you to do something that's actually your job, right? So even though there's no need to tell you because you're already getting it done, you're already in the middle of it, or it's part of your job, by them verbalizing it out loud and telling you, they feel like, they look like they're telling you what to do. They're leaving that impression. The tasker will say things in a meeting like, especially if there's projects going on and tasks to assign, they'll say things like, oh, could you do that? It's really important that that gets done. Would you mind taking care of that? Right? They assign you a job. They will say things like, hey, could you come over here a minute? I really need your help. The power move there is that they're getting you to come to them, right? The whole point of the tasker is using language to get you to do something for them, something on their behalf that makes them look like they're in charge. A tasker will say in a meeting, hey, Samantha, thank you so much for taking care of that thing for me. Because she's just told the whole group that you've done something for her in a more subservient position. The other thing a tasker can do is say the meeting is over and she gets up to leave the meeting and she goes, hey, Sam, come with me. Let's go. Because she's showing the room, she's leading, you're following. So the lower EQ taskers, the people who do this, who have a lower EQ, do it because they themselves do not like being told what to do. They do not like authority of any kind. The higher ones, the ones who have moderately higher IQ, they're ambitious. They want to be seen as if they're in a position of power. And so they just throw things out there. And the people who jump in and follow are the ones who give them, a perception of authority, even if it's not real. So how many of you work with a tasker? Or use this ploy yourself? Because like I said last week, we partly want to be honest about which one of these political maneuvers we use. We probably use lots of them in different scenarios. I am not putting these out there as great or terrible, but I do want to point out that every one of our political ploys, it has what it achieves and it has what can be the downfall effects of it, right? So if you're a tasker, you might be getting things done. You might not be very well liked. So how do you deal with a tasker? Boundaries. Boundaries. Taskers, the smart ones, will start with the small things. Smart taskers will say things like, hey, could you pass that pencil? Do you mind getting me a cup of coffee while you're up? They start with the little things. It seems so innocuous. It seems so innocuous to just say, yeah, sure, here you go. I will do that for you. It's an easy thing for me to do. But if you know it's a tasker, know that they're just starting you out. They're going to layer on and layer on more tasks, larger tasks, more meaningful tasks as they get to know you and as you keep saying yes. So when it comes to those light requests, when you know it's a tasker and they're trying to, pull you in, something as simple as, hey, can you get me a cup of coffee while you're up? Man, pull on your dad jokes. Make it a light-hearted retort, but you're still saying no. Hey, your legs aren't broken. You can get it yourself. You can even say something along the lines of, I would love to get you a cup of coffee, but I quit my barista job 20 years ago, right? You make it a joke. You make it lighthearted. It is very hard to push back on cheerful resistance, but you're drawing a line. I'm not your servant. I'm not your assistant. And even if I am, I'm not being paid to bring you coffee. So boundaries are important. Now, when it comes to the bigger tasks, if you've got somebody who's already asking you to take on this project, do this part of the job for me. I can't do this. I'm so swamped. Could you help me? I need you to do these things. Boundary still applies. I'm sorry, I can't help you with that right now. I don't have time to tackle this. My workload is already overflowing. You're going to have to tackle that yourself. You know what? I wouldn't do that justice. You would do this so much better than me. You better keep it on your plate. Dealing with a tasker is all about boundaries. It's really all about saying no. There are a million ways that you can say no and be polite and be professional. And in fact, I created for you guys several months ago a handout called 50 Ways. I think it's 50 Ways to Say No. If you want the reinforcement of 50 ways to say no, drop the word 50, drop the number 50 in the chat, in the comments, and I will be sure I get that handout to you. 50 ways to say no. Holding your boundaries, so important, absolutely key to dealing with a tasker. You're going to find it's key to dealing with a lot of different people, including yourself. All right, profile number 3, the Grumposaurus. The political play with the Grumposaurus is that the fewer people who boss her around, the more power she retains. She holds on to her power by being inaccessible, and sometimes by being just downright mean. The Grumposaurus can be both aggressive and she can be passive aggressive. Her driver is, I am looking out for number one. I am protecting me. I'm protecting my time. I'm protecting my power. Just don't ask me for anything you are not putting upon me. Her EQ is typically pretty low, and the impact she has in the work environment is that people avoid her, which means there's not a lot of team spirit going on. And if she's an aggressive Grumposaurus, it also means there could be a negative energy, a current, an undercurrent of meanness or passive aggressiveness in an environment like that. Now, oftentimes, if you're a Grumposaurus and you have this low EQ, you're in that space because you are frustrated with your career. You are frustrated by feeling unseen, unheard, unrecognized. And I guarantee you a Grumposaurus feels this way both at work and at home. This is not just how I show up at the office. In fact, so many times when I'm working with women and we think we have this, here's my office personality and my office facade, and then I go home and I'm a different person. No, you're not. We're not. We are the same people. Some characteristics or traits might show up differently because we're interacting with different personalities, but we are the same person. If you are a Grumposaurus at work, you are a Grumposaurus at home. Now, like I said, they can be aggressive or passive aggressive, or they can go back and forth between both. And the thing is, their EQ is low, so they don't know how to be assertive. They don't know how to say no, right, and set the boundaries assertively without being aggressive. So that's how it comes out. So if you are afraid of approaching a colleague because she's going to yell, or she's going to throw a fit, or she's going to say something snide and embarrassing at a meeting, That's an aggressive one. The aggressive players, sometimes they're lazy. Sometimes they're just trying to protect their own time and their own turf. If you've got a passive aggressive Grumposaurus, she may pretend not to hear you. She may pretend not, she doesn't understand you, does not understand what you're talking about. She may brush you off with a comment about you have to go talk to somebody else at a different authority and get permission. And the thing with the passive aggressive one is she is stubbornly sticking to her guns, that she is not going to do whatever you want or whatever you need. And she will use all of these more subtle, oh, you needed that? I did not know. I didn't know you needed that. I didn't understand that. That's not what you said. Might be a little bit of gaslighting involved. So how many of you work with a Grumposaurus, with somebody who basically protects her time and protects her turf by saying no, always saying no? So how do you deal with her? The Grumposaurus generally is the one most anchored in a personal sense of self-defense. You could take the action of trying to soften her up and become her friend, and by befriending her, she becomes more of a team player. She's more willing to work with you. You could do that and have a huge influence on her. But it is a double-edged sword. Now remember, we're talking about playing politics here, and I'm sharing these profiles with you so that you know how to engage with them, because you yourself engage in politics. We all do. Here's the deal if you befriend a Grumposaurus. Most grumpy political players are not skilled. They're rarely high performers. They are often not that great at their job, and they are definitely not that great at navigating the environment with you. So if you are going to hitch your wagon to a Grumposaurus, you may be in for stagnation or a stalling of your own advancement, of your own projects, of your own career. So you want to be careful of that. Robert Greene wrote a book called The 48 Laws of Power, and in it he says, avoid the unhappy and the unlucky. And the Grumposaurus typically falls in that category. All right. Profile number 4. One of my favorites, the petty bureaucrat. I know you have all run into the petty bureaucrat because we have all been to the DMV at some point, right? We have all been to some local government office where there's a form and you got to fill out the form and you got to fill it out the exact way. Petty bureaucrats stake their claim to power by rules and laws and regulations and SOPs. So their action is the insistence that you follow the letter of the law. Not the spirit of the law, the letter of the law. Their driver is that their power comes from control. It comes from access. This is what gives them status. That they can control the access to things gives them status. Their EQ is typically low. Their overall emotional skills tend to be typically low in this because of the role that they're playing here. They're not tapping into their own emotions, much less anybody else's. They respond, the impact they have is they respond to positional authority. They respond to who's the boss, which means if you're working with petty bureaucrats, you are working in a very rigid environment that lacks empathy, it lacks flexibility, and not super supportive, not fun. So sometimes a petty bureaucrat comes across, I'm going to call her Petty Patty. Petty Patty comes across as very confident, but her confidence comes from the fact that she has rules. She has documented rules and laws that back her up. And so she can defend herself because she's got actual documentation. Petty bureaucrats, Petty Patty, very power conscious. She's very much aware of the hierarchical order of authority. These rules are on paper. They say what's what. And her job is to make sure we all follow the rules because it's for the good of everyone. And this is where her sense of personal power comes in. She is the upholder of the law. When she becomes the go-to person, right, for procedures, for policies, for flows and operations, right, this is where she feels like she's someone. when she's the go-to person because she controls the process and procedures. Now, it can be something as simple as, and I know I've run into this more than once, right? I'm walking down the hall to IT, I've got my computer, and I'm like, listen, my keyboard's acting up. I think if you just could swap it out, or if you could actually, if I could just borrow one that I could just plug in, I could get my work done. Do you mind? And the IT person says, yeah, okay, there's a form online you're supposed to fill out, and then your boss has to approve it, and then my boss has to approve it, and then I can give you the spare keyboard. Dude, I just got to finish my report. It's due in like 3 hours. Can't I just borrow the keyboard? No, you cannot. No, you cannot. You might be thinking, this is a really simple favor. I would do this for you, but that is not how they operate. And the worst part is you can't really get mad at them. You can't make a fuss about it because they're right. They're following the proper process and procedure. Officially, they are correct. How many of you work with a petty bureaucrat? How many of you have, I wish I could see your comments, guys. How many, I don't know why Facebook is being stubborn tonight. It is not showing me any comments. But how many of you work, I promise I will go through them later and I will respond, so do share. But how many of you are working with a petty bureaucrat, with somebody who is just like, if it is not written down and it does not follow these laws, we are not doing it? Because the unfortunate thing about dealing with Petty Patty is because she relies on the rules, you look like the bad guy by asking her to break the rules or bend the rules. You look like the person who's out of line, not her. Now, you could try to convince her, right? So here's the thing. You're not likely to convince Petty Patty to, let you in. You forgot your badge just this once. You don't want to go all the way home. Petty Patty's going to make you go all the way home. You could attempt some psychological judo on her and see if you could get her to kind of join your side. Here's the deal with psychological judo. Psychological judo is about digging into what really matters to Patty and her sense of power. And how do we find a different way of giving her that sense of power, or even more power, if she does us this one favor? So you might say, Patty, listen, I've got to finish this report in 2 hours. I just need that keyboard for the next 2 hours. I realize it's breaking the rules, but listen, you let me finish that report and I let my boss know that you loaned me that keyboard, that you were flexible and loaned me that keyboard. I finished this report, and this report's going to get to this person on time and this person on time, and your boss is going to look like a rock star, and they're all going to know it's because of you. And Patty now has a bigger stage and she's going to shine brighter. If I can convince her of that, maybe she'll let me take the keyboard. Maybe. But this ploy works way more often in movies than it does in real life. In real life, we don't often think of either the great power ploy that's going to get Petty Patty to move, or we don't take the time to convince her of the story. And truthfully, your best bet and your most efficient bet is to go talk to Patty's boss. Again, Patty responds to hierarchical authority, positional power, who's up on top. Even your boss may not influence Petty Patty. You got to go to her boss. So your best bet is to go to her boss to say, hey, listen, I know it's outside the rules, but I really need that keyboard. I've just got to finish this report for my boss. You guys are going to talk about it in your bigwig meeting tomorrow. Could you help me out and, ask Patty if she wouldn't mind giving that to me? You have to do the end run with a Petty Patty. All right. The last profile is the power grabber. You know a power grabber. At some point, you have dealt with a power grabber. The power grabber talks through all the meetings, is always looking to take on more authority. They don't necessarily want more responsibility, but they want more authority. Will take credit for all the team's work, right? They don't care. If there's credit to loot, boy, the power grabber will take the credit. Their action is all me, 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 me. It's all about me. Their driver is the ambition to rule. They want to rule. They want to be the boss. They're power hungry. They are genuinely a power grabber. Their EQ can range. You can have kind of low to moderate power players. You can have some with some fairly high social skills. They do lack empathy. That is the one thing that will tamper their EQ. And the impact is that power grabbers will steamroll over anyone who's in their way. And they will justify it. They will absolutely justify their behavior. Power grabbers are the ones that you hear say things like, well, look, it just had to get done. I mean, she wasn't doing the job. She wasn't doing it right. She wasn't doing it well. She wasn't doing it on time. It had to get done or we were all going to fail. So I had to step in and do it. I had to step in and tell her that. She'll say things like, well, look, the company's goals are what really matter here. We just need to do what I'm just here fighting for the company. I'm just here doing whatever it takes to hit the company's goals. That's what matters. She might pull a personal story into this, like, hey, listen, I should have gotten that promotion 3 months ago. Now I just have to show them that they should have given it to me. I'm fighting for my fair share, so I'm sorry if it feels like I'm stepping all over to you, but I need to show them they made a mistake by not promoting me. The power grabber will use the greater good. She will say, look, our project is going to help 100,000 people. 100,000 people. So you know what? If the 250 over here get trampled on in the process, you know, it's too bad, but it's collateral damage. We're going to help 100,000 more, right? She justifies her power moves and the way that she stomps on people by saying it's for something bigger. It's for something better. Now, she can show up in 3 different flavors. She can show up as a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde personality. This is the power grabber who, if you're talking to her one-on-one and you're talking about a project or you're working on something, she's very nice. She's supportive. She's helpful. Nothing is at stake when she's talking to you one-on-one. But the minute the CEO walks in the room, the boss walks in the room, somebody from management comes in, the minute somebody else comes in and she has the chance to shine, she is throwing you under the bus. If she's not ignoring you and your contributions altogether, she's actually talking you down. So that's the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde flavor of the power grabber. Another version of the power grabber is always on. This is the person who cannot stop talking about her ambition, cannot stop talking about how she needs to have more authority. She needs to do this. She needs to be able to do that. You all need to fall in line so she can do these things because it's for the greater good. But she can't seem to turn that off. So it's very hard to develop any kind of personal relationship with her. It's very hard to get close to her. And she herself will feel isolated and lonely and not understand why. Because again, the emotional EQ here, it's low to moderate. It can be higher, but they lack empathy. And when you lack empathy, you don't put yourself in other people's shoes. You don't understand how off-putting you are when you are constantly chasing power. The third version is the most dangerous version. This is the social butterfly. This is the power grabber who has mastered social skills, has a higher EQ, and they're dangerous because they put on this facade of being caring, of worrying about the people. And it often takes people with a much higher EQ to discern, oh, that's just the veneer. That's just the facade. Underneath, they're still going after all the power themselves. So I'm curious how many of you work with one of these power grabbers. Or maybe you work with somebody who reflects all 3 versions. Like I work with somebody now. So dangerous. I work with somebody now who actually uses all 3 of those versions of power grabbing. And it's a gentleman, not a woman. And the challenge is not everybody sees the ugly side. Right? The problem with power grabbers who are skilled enough socially is some people don't see past the veneer of, hey, it's all good, right? It's all good. I'm here for you. We're in it together. And then they don't see the backstabbing that's going on or the gaslighting that's going on, because that's what comes next, right? The first 3 sentences out of their mouth are how everything's great and we're all in this together. But then the next 3 sentences is them establishing their power base, and often trying to disrupt or demoralize yours. So how do you deal with someone like this? Well, first you need to seek out the influencers and the allies on your side who also see this person for who they are. See if you can find other people who also see this person for who they are, because having those allies in the room will help you in political conversations, right? In group dialogues, having other people who understand this person has a veneer of camaraderie, but it's not genuine, will help you with conversations. 2, never openly communicate that you don't like this person. Never let them see that you're not their biggest fan, because they will absolutely use that against you. The power grabber who is socially smart and they know you don't like them will absolutely go to the office gossip and say, hey, you know what? Natalie doesn't like me. Do you know what she did? Do you know what she said? And true or not, they will spread the rumors so that you are the bad guy for not liking them. They'll get that dynamic going in the office. They will use your own sense of guilt, your own sense of just being a good person against you. Because you're like, oh, I did say that person was a jerk and I shouldn't have said that. Now I owe them. Now I feel like I have to make it up to them. No, you don't. No, you don't. But they will absolutely make you feel that way. The power grabber that I work with, and here's what you have to look out for, right? They will use goodness to manipulate you. This literally happened 2 weeks ago. The power grabber that I deal with, who's all flavors, Jekyll, Hyde, all of those, called me up to have the conversation about, can't we just be friends? We need to have each other's back. We're on the same team. And 90% of the time we agree anyway. We're on the same page. We just kind of come at things a little bit differently. And I really need your help and support. And I think we would be an amazing team. And let's just get along and let's be each other's office BFF. Can we do that? Let's do that. That was the call. He specifically called me to have that conversation. Not more than 48 hours later, he sent an email to a third person on a project that we're working on together, where he outlined all the things he wanted done on the project. Now, I know that he sent the email because the third person called me and said, hey, I got this message from this guy. I got this email. He didn't copy you on it, but he's asking me to do things that are, one, philosophically against where I want to go. We do not agree philosophically on a couple of points on this project. That's one. So he already knew that he was going against what I wanted. 2, I'm the decision maker. He gets to have input, but I'm the actual decision maker. So he's doing an end run on me with other people on this same project where I'm actually the decision maker trying to get other people on his side. So much for being my BFF at work. So this is what they do. This is what a power grabber does. Don't ever fool yourself that you are going to teach a power grabber to change her ways. These are old patterns. These are patterns they have been using for a long time. These are patterns that have worked for them. They've worked for them. They're not going to change because you have a heart-to-heart conversation with them or you point out the errors of their ways. It's not going to change them. You are wasting your breath. What you do want to be aware of is, who are the allies of the power grabber? Pardon me. Who is it the power grabber is using in the office as their allies and influencers? What you want to do, aside from gathering your own who see the power grabber for who she is, you want to also get to know the power grabber's allies and influencers. And start creating your own relationship with them. You never say a word to them about what you think of the power grabber. You never say a negative word against the person. What you're doing is you're allowing these influencers and these allies to see you for you. That way, when the power grabber does spread the gossip, make some innuendo that says that you're not this or you're that, these people already know you for who you are. Pardon me. And they are more likely then to make their own judgment and not just take the power grabber at her word. So if you're going to play a political game, if you are in a political game with a power grabber and you have to engage, because my number one recommendation is, if you don't have to engage, don't engage. Keep your politics clean and safe and mild. If you have to engage with a power grabber, one of the most effective ways that you can start to neutralize some of their impact is by building your own relationships with their allies and influencers, and start basically expanding your own sphere of influence. All right. Here's the deal. Fighting back with a power grabber is not a battle. You can battle with a tasker. You can battle even with a Grumposaurus. A power grabber is a war. It is long-term political warfare. So keep that in mind. All right. The gossip, the tasker, the Grumposaurus, the petty bureaucrat, the power grabber. Those are the 5 that we tackled tonight. Next week, we tackle 5 more. Next week, we're going to talk about the kiss-up, the power aligner, the social shunner, the shallow ego, and the political animal, who might be a little bit of a sociopath. So, thank you so much, ladies, for joining me tonight for Training Tuesday. I am so sorry I cannot see your comments. I promise that I will find a way to get in and visit those. I will answer questions. I will respond to stories. This topic is so much fun, and it would be way more fun if I could see your comments and your questions. So thank you for joining tonight. If you have any questions, or if you want to have a coaching conversation about how to deal with your political environment, how to deal with any one of these personalities, drop the word dig in the comments, and I will reach out to you, and we will do a short free coaching call. It is a sales-free zone. It is just coaching to help you get through your particular political situation. So, quick reminder, if you want the 50 ways to say no, drop the number 50 in the comments. If you'd like a free coaching conversation dealing with your political environment or your particular political nemesis, drop the word dig. We'll schedule a Dirty Girl mini dig, which is a free coaching call to help you on your way and dealing with political shenanigans. All right, ladies, thank you for joining me for Training Tuesday. Looking forward to seeing you again next week.